to some extent, porn exists in all cultures. Anyone that can draw with a stick in the sand can do porn, right?
Right.
But I think we're in a society where sex addiction has gone way out of proportion to where it used to be because of the internet.
Yeah.
The amount of variety and the ability to basically dial up anything you want.
Yeah.
It desensitizes people to day-to-day sex. That's called vanilla sex.
Yeah.
And people don't like vanilla sex. It's not exciting, it's not crazy, it doesn't preoccupy oneself, it doesn't afford an escape of any kind. So it says more about people needing the escape than anything else.
How has your choice of profession affected you?
Well, initially I thought I would hate men.
Yeah.
Going into this field, and I was surprised to find that I have more of a respect for them and compassion for what they go through. Yeah. And I think women tend to veer more towards food disorders and men towards sex disorders for a variety of reasons. And it's not that much different. Well, a person who has an eating disorder has to learn how to eat healthfully. You just don't. It's not like alcohol where you put the plug on the jug and say, okay, I'm not touching this anymore. It's more complicated and more difficult. I have to learn how to handle this in a different way. Mm-hmm. And how am I going to do that once I've already crossed this line and I've been over here and even that's not doing it for me anymore. How do I get back over here again? It's very sad too, because I see a lot of tragic cases come into my office where there was a lot of trauma growing up, and they're struggling valiantly to keep it together. And they've spent a lot of money on this. They've contracted diseases. They've gotten arrested. I have a lot of compassion for people that are trying to do something about it, at least. The ones I think I have a little less compassion for are the people that feel that they still deserve whatever it is that they do at the expense of other people. But even them, I understand that that's where they have to be at that moment. And someday they may change their opinion or have a consequence where they wake up, and some don't. They don't wake up at all.
I was looking at your website, kirstenrogoff.com, and you're talking about post-traumatic stress disorder. And I think many people think of PTSD as something that just veterans of wars suffer from, but who else might suffer from PTSD?
The partner of a sex addict. I think, first of all, a sex addict themselves probably had trauma growing up, so in a way they're suffering from it.
Yeah. And
they're reliving it too. The partner of a sex addict looks like they're crazy when they find out. Let's say they have a husband that's been cheating for 20 years with other men, just to make a mild case, And now she finds out the guy who she's married and thought was all one way is a completely different person than she's known. This is not who she knew. Her basic sense of safety is shattered, trust is shattered, betrayal, all the things that are similar to, say, a rape victim or an incest rape victim occur with someone who discovers a betrayal. And it's very traumatic, and she becomes hypervigilant. She becomes the greatest detective on earth. She's every time he does something a little different, she knows, and everyone thinks they call her co-addict. And I have a real problem with that word, because you're only a co-addict if you've had those behaviors before discovering betrayal. You can't be labeled something that you're not. Her behavior does not make her a co-addict. Her behavior makes her somebody who just found out about a betrayal. And they will act crazy. A lot of people don't like working with them because they're very reactive and very traumatized, and it can go on for a long time, especially if they're working with people that come from this model of co-addiction, which is a devaluation of what she just experienced. So, obviously if she continues the behavior beyond what the sex addict is doing, then you might say, okay, this has triggered a co-addiction of some kind. But it's very hard to tell someone who's pledged their allegiance and loyalty to someone not to be affected by it. I think that's not healthy, and detaching is not always a healthy thing either, which is what they suggest. AA is something that came together in the 30s. That is when women were far more dependent on men for their livelihood. And there was a moralistic viewpoint that you need to stay with them no matter what.
Yeah.
And so they've adopted the 12 steps for all of these programs. And in some cases I believe that it's a bit archaic and not applicable to today's situation. A woman, I don't believe, should stay with a man that is not interested in recovery, for example. Mm-hmm. And I don't think detaching is a way to improve the situation of intimacy. I think having feelings and expressing them are very important for two people to feel that they're involved with each other. She should not avoid social things and doing things that are important to her, and she shouldn't neglect what she likes to do and going to movies with friends and things like that. But I think she should have the ability to say, hey, I don't like this. This is hurtful to me. And demand that, without certain things and boundaries in place, that we're not working here together. I don't think it's helpful to a sex addict to have someone that says, oh, I don't care what you do. It's not helpful.
I was fascinated by the concept of differentiation, which I discovered in the book Passionate Marriage. And how would you describe differentiation?
Well, I was once given an analogy. A child sits on mother's lap, and the child's around 2 or 3, and mother has his favorite candy in her hand and says, do you want the candy? And he goes, no. But it's your favorite candy. No. Okay, I'll put the candy back in my purse. Then he grabs it. The child has been dependent and symbiotic with his mother for the first year of life. He's totally has no control over anything in his life. Now he's starting to be able to negotiate yes and no, I want, I don't want, but not very well. Right now, if mother wants something or thinks or offers him something, the feeling is if I say yes, I'm part of mother still.
Yeah.
I'm not separate from her. So the only way I know how to separate is to do the 180 and say no way. Those are the terrible twos, oppositional defiance.
Yeah.
Some people never grow out of that. That a normal expectation is seen as one of those demands. Even if they come up with their own expectations. I have clients that say, it's a funny thing. I promised my wife a romantic weekend. Then I resent it. Although I'm the one that promised her that, now it's an expectation she has.
Yeah.
That I've initiated. She should not have those expectations. Even though I just promised her something, she can't have an expectation because it feels like now I have to. So I tell my patients there's only 2 reasons why you do anything. Because you either want to or you've decided it's in your best interest for a variety of reasons. You can't do things because I should, I must, I ought to, have to. Because the minute you throw those ideas in your head, you're not going to enjoy it. And you're going to rebel against it, and it just won't work.
Yeah, that makes sense. This has been good. Have there been any questions that I should have asked you that I have not asked you?
Well, we haven't touched on sexual anorexia. Well, we kind of did, which is a huge problem for people with sex addiction. Quite often you'll see both. You'll see the sex addict act out and no one knows it yet, or he's not willing to do something about it. And the main complaint for a couple is, he won't have sex with me, or he's not interested, or